All right, welcome everyone to this lesson video about list, and we're going to start off. This is a part one of our list series where we're going to talk about what lists are, and we're going to talk about traversing lists to start off in our first list video. So, what is a list? List is a collection data type built in Python, and we get to now have a collection-based data type where we get to store a bunch of things in basically a database, right? So each item can be the same or different. So you can have a mixture of integer, float, string, booleans, or another list if you like, or they can be the same. Each item can be the same type, which is recommended for your early programming needs. Each items we separate them by a comma. Okay, so if I were to create a list manually, like I would use a square bracket, and each item would be separated by a comma. If it's still a string, it will still require each item that is string, it would require quotation marks. Okay, and it is iterable, so we can look through it. We can access each individual values in a list using a for loop. Okay, so I want to show you some examples of a list. So I have A list, B list, and C list. So A list is just a list of numbers. So if you want to create a list of numbers here, I've created a list of numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you notice, they're all separated by commas, and we denote them. We create them using square brackets. In B list, I have the word hello separated by its characters in a list. So I have HELLO, those are the characters of the word hello, and I have them all separated. And since these are all string values, they still have their quotation marks as well. Now, if you were to create like a very big list, normal design pattern is that you start your bracket, you create a new line, indent, one item, comma, another item, comma, and the last item, and you end it off like that. So if you have to manually create large list with multiple lists inside, maybe this is a common method to do so. Okay. And here it's a mixture of a list within a list with an integer list of integers, list of strings, and a Boolean value, right? A very silly list right now, but that's definitely doable because we don't need to worry about the type inside of our list. There's a new function that I'm going to teach you. It's the list function. Okay, basically we get to create a list based on our argument, right? So it's going to convert the argument to a list, and that argument should be either a sequence or a string. Okay, so if I did a list of hello, it's going to give me all the characters separated, okay, into each individual items in that list. I can use a list function on a range. Okay, so if I were to do range 10 to 20, going up by threes, I would have a list of numbers 10, 13, 16, 19 because I'm going up by 3 and not including 20. Here, string a 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm converting 1, 2, 3, 4 to a string, right? Because I want to look at all the digits and I want it all separated into a list items. So I have item 1, 2, 3, 4 inside a list, and now I have my digits. So list is a quick way to create list if you are generating a list from a sequence or a collection. Okay, let's talk about traversal and access. Okay, so traverse is to like travel across. So we're gonna travel across a list. Okay, and we can do that with a for loop, the easiest way. So we can have for this iterating variable I called item inside a list. Okay, so I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to print each item. Right, so if I run this code here, the output's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Using a for loop and having an iterating variable here called item, I'm traversing through this list where item represents each individual value in order. Okay, so this is a really nice way to look at each individual values in a list. If it's traversable, lists are also indexable, which is really nice. So we can access individual indexes in a list, or we can do slicing as well. So if this is my A list here, 10, 13, 16, 19, list at 0 is 10, 1, 13, 2 is 16, right? At 3 is 19, and forward to -1 is 19 as well. So it's much like strings, it also allows negative indexing as well. Okay, if I want to travel with an index value, right, I can use index. This is an iterating variable. It is iterating through a range from 0 to the length of this list, right? So it's going to start at 0, and I'm going to get H. At 1 is E, at 2 is L, 3 is L, and 4 is O. So using now an index value, I can use a square brackets to go to that point and grab that item. And lists are sliceable, okay? So if you remember, with strings, we can slice lists by using this kind of, I guess, a formula: start, end, and step. Okay, so by modifying these values, we get different slices of our list. if this is my list, if I went to 0 all the way to the length of the list, I get that value, right? I'm literally getting the entire value. If I want to start at 1 and stop at 2, so starting at 1, stopping at 2, don't never include that last value, so I get 13 here. Starting at the beginning, going all the way to index of 3, so 0, 1, 2, this is 3, so I get this top portion, or front portion, so I get 10, 13, 16. If I were to do a list of ::(-1), that we've learned that in strings, that is looking at it backwards, so I get 19, 16, 13, and 10. So as you can see, a lot of the skills that we practice in terms of traversing, indexing, slicing, that's all applicable to list as well. And our very last example would be starting at -2, -4, going backwards. So I'm starting at -2, going all the way up to -4, not including. Right, so I get 16 and 13, and that would be my result of the slice. Okay, so from here, we're going to look at a problem of some example problems and how we can solve that. So here, create a list of even numbers. So I'm given n, like a input value, integer greater than 0. And we're going to create a list of even numbers 2 to n. Okay, and this doesn't even require a loop. Okay, so we need to handle integer inputs and all that. We need a list. List is composed of even numbers, and we're going to stop at n. Inclusively on this one, just to be sure. So what we're going to do is take num as an integer input, okay? And we're going to go range. I'm going to analyze all the number from 2 to num plus 1 because I want to include that value and go up by 2 every time so that I'm ensuring that every number I'm looking at is even. Once that range function is complete, I can convert the result into a list, and we'll get a nice list of even numbers. All right, let's look at problem 2. We're going to check if the list has values of 6. So we're going to give it an array of integers. We're going to put true if 6 appears either in the first and the last element, right? And the array will be length of 1 or more. Okay? So if we're to analyze this, we can't input a list. That's a major problem. So to input a list, what I want you to do is really create a loop and get the values one by one. Okay, because if I were to input something like this, it's going to be a string. And if I convert that to a list, it's going to get this monstrosity. So be careful when we're dealing with lists that you can't input a list without having some sort of a loop. So what we're going to do is create an empty list, right? We're going to set the size to whatever input they give us, right? And we're going to loop that many times and append values. So we're going to, every time we loop, we're going to get a value to enter, and we're going to use .append, which is a method, a list method, which allows us to add a value to the end of a list, okay? A single value. Append adds single value. So the append method adds single value to the end of it. So this will be our solution. Up here, we have an empty list. We grab the size. Based on that size, we loop how many times we want to, what values we want to enter, and we append it to the list. After we have that, we can check that, hey, if the first value is 6 or the last value is 6, we're going to output true. And if both of them are false, it's going to give us false. So today we talked about what lists are generally, and we looked at how to traverse it, how to index it, how to slice it, and we looked at how we can use lists to solve some minor simple problems. Thank you for watching. Stay classy.